Well, Soho is my first collection, and it, I suppose, tries to take a look at gay identity and desire, um, queer ancestry, and also gay shame. So growing up under Section 20, I had to become a more imaginative reader. I had to sort of drill down into Shakespeare, Gerald Manley Hopkins, and various poets to try and look for a kind of queer ancestry. And I think that kind of intense reading and sort of trying to look underneath the surface of things has stayed with me. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoy reading poetry so much, and that type of reading has certainly influenced my writing. So I'm always trying to write openly queer poetry in response to the fact that that type of poetry hasn't always been available, and for hundreds of years people weren't able to write openly queer poetry, and indeed there are places in the world where people still aren't allowed to. So all of my poetry is hopefully recognisably queer. Well, Soho is my first collection, and it's a book of 4 quarters. The first section, Admission, it talks about queer desire, trauma, the trauma that our bodies go through, the vulnerability of queer bodies in society, through an almost sort of post-confessional type lens. And then the second quarter in the book, Verlaine in Soho, tries to imagine what it would be like for Paul Verlaine, the French symbolist poet, if he were to come to London, Soho, and what might happen to him poetically as well as narratively. Much in the same way that David Wojnarowicz's photo series Rambo in New York tries to invite a queer ancestor, Rambo, into his own lifetime and his own experience in New York in the 90s. The third section of my book is largely about gay shame. It tries to look at various essays and academic texts by thinkers like Eve Sedgwick, for instance, who really began thinking about gay shame in the early noughties, and their writing, and I've tried to allow that sort of academic tone to sort of try and puncture my own sort of poetic voice, and so I've tried to produce these hybrid poems that explore gay shame and why gay shame is an interesting angle to look at queer experience through, because of course we can't just be proud, we have to also admit the place we've come from, which is a place of illegality, a place of trauma, and something that we are still fighting against today. And then the fourth section, Oh My Soho, is a long poem which takes a homo-psychogeographical tour around London Soho in the hope to unearth some queer ancestry that isn't just historical trauma. I'm really thrilled to have written and to have published a book, and because I grew up under the Section of 28, certainly when I began writing, I didn't really think it would be possible for me to publish a book like Soho. So I'm really thrilled that it exists, and I hope that it will fall into the hands of people who are looking for their own sort of queer lineage or their own sort of queer experience in literature. It's really important for me to write openly queer poetry because people haven't always been able to, and not every poem has to be explicit, but I hope that every poem is queer because I'm able to, and I feel like I should celebrate that through my work.